And welcome back to Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jono,
And I'm your host, Chris.
and we're here to bring you the post-Week 14 pending Monday Night Football games injury report. There was a lot more injuries this week as there has been the 13 weeks prior, and we want to jump right into them and dive into all the impact it has in fantasy because it is playoff time, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, this couldn't happen at a worse time. Right before the playoffs for a lot of these guys that have been carrying some people's seasons. The big one is Justin Herbert, and he's having surgery tomorrow, which is today when this drops, on his right index finger. So that's his grip finger. It's a pointer finger. It's going to spiral the football. He's having surgery on it. He fractured his finger. It's probably going to keep him out the entire season. They're not very good right now. So that's not saying much. But the implications that it has for Keenan Allen, for Austin Eckler, and for any other player on the Chargers. I mean, Gerald Everett was a streamable option at tight end. And now I can't imagine that he's going to be streamable at all with Easton Stick. Keenan Allen was Easton Stick. Sorry, Easton Stick. Keenan Allen was a workhorse for a lot of people's fantasy teams, a steal of the draft going in the 4th, 5th round, and he ends up being a top 5 wide receiver. And I can't imagine his volume is going to be there the same way it was with Justin Herbert. On the plus side, I do think that it adds value to Austin Eckler because they're going to rely on the ground game a lot more than having Herbert back there who's chucking it 40 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's some major implications, especially for like the Eckler owners who've been relying on him all season, and he's been really wildly inconsistent because his offense hasn't been. Now they're getting back to the roots, so I think it actually down the stretch, he could pay off dividends from being that top 5 pick that he went in most drafts.
And I mean, I kind of differ a little bit in your opinion on the Gerald Everett. And I'm not saying he's worth a streamer, but it is something to think about when these backup quarterbacks come in, especially the young ones. They rely heavily on their checkdowns. And who are your biggest checkdowns? It's usually your tight ends and Austin Eckler. So I agree with you 100% on Eckler, but tight ends are like a nice safety blanket for these guys because they're shorter routes. They get the ball out quicker because they don't want to hold the ball for too long. It's a little bit different. So I do agree Keenan Allen takes an impact. I don't think there's anybody else worth owning there. I don't even think it's worth owning Josh Palmer in the case that he even comes back. I think it's really Eckler, Keenan Allen, and you gotta downgrade Keenan Allen to a wide receiver 2 at best, ceiling wise. And
I don't know. I don't know about that. I think he's still a wide receiver 1. It's just brings I think his ceiling's gone on the 20, 30 point weeks that he was having
100%.
This year. I still think
he's not a top 5 guy every week anymore.
Yeah, but he still could be a top 10 guy.
I'm not saying Easton Stick is a slouch, but I mean he needs to get in the end zone. And if this team isn't going to score, I mean, they have 6 points 2 weeks ago against New England. They had
with Herbert
7 points last week at the end of the game with Stick and a running play. Like, I just don't know if the points are going to be there for Keenan Allen to be a wide receiver 1. That's my concern.
He's not as bad as like Stephon Diggs for me right now, where I think the rest of season Stephon Diggs could be benchable.
He scares me. His
schedule scares me, and I really do think that if you're a Stephon Diggs owner, find another option.
Have him as your flex, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even think he deserves to be in your starting lineup during a playoff week. It's win or go home. So if your opponent is throwing up big numbers and he's getting 26 yards a game,
the only thing I think about Diggs, and we won't stray too far off this Herbert talk, is the fact that he is getting peppered at times and targeted by Allen. And that's the benefit there. I mean, he has somebody throwing to him that's going to throw to him, an actual quarterback throwing to him, and not one of these backup quarterbacks. That's the part that scares me, is these backup quarterbacks are the ones that actually are throwing to him. And I want to look up what his stats were this past week. They were terrible in terms of output, but in terms of target share, this past game, he had 11 targets. He only caught 4 balls, but he had 11 targets in back-to-back games. I think that's worthy of it for sure. It's like on the same plane as Keenan Allen. If they're going to get 11 targets
with the same volume there, okay. Who do you like more, Amari Cooper rest of season or Stephon Diggs rest of season?
Cooper with Flacco. Yeah, I do like Cooper with Flacco, and the schedule's better.
Right.
But he may not be an option, is what I'm saying. It's like, who are you going to try and pull off your bench that's going to be better than Diggs in terms of volume share?
Yeah,
you may be throwing a dart at the board, but yeah. Anyway,
last point on Keenan Allen. On the plus side, we've seen backup quarterbacks come in this year and having an elite receiver on the outside. They still share, they still target them downfield.
Well, they have to.
Ja'Marr Chase, we were so worried about with Jake Browning.
I still am. I mean, we watched last game in a favorable matchup.
Yeah, but he's still the game before still has 100 yards and a touchdown. Still is relevant. It doesn't. I don't know if it's going to be there every week, but they also blew up against the team and had commanded that game early. So they weren't needing to throw the ball.
Yeah, I agree, but I think that's they have Minnesota, which is going to be a tough defense to play, and stuff like that. So with Browning and Chase, I do agree with you on Keenan Allen. He's going to get the targets because he's the only guy to throw to before. He's still the only guy to throw to, and he gets open. Right. I just think Gerald Everett is somebody to stash on a tight end because he's got favorable matchups, but. Again, I'm saying that because of the way backup quarterbacks tend to use tight ends when they come into games on short weeks, especially like this. And same thing with Austin Eckler, especially right. Austin Eckler. If we knew anything there, this whole experiment to see who's the hot hand and all that stuff, we know there's no other hands out there that are even warm for the Chargers. It's Austin Eckler, and it comes to show you that when I said it before on the podcast, and I didn't listen to my own advice. My own gut, I should say. But I said on our podcast, Austin Eckler had an opportunity in a favorable matchup that he hasn't had since he had those big blow-up weeks when he came off the ankle. Every bad week he's had has been against a good rush defense. He's had one good week against a good rush defense, and that was week 1 against Miami when they weren't a good rush defense yet. So I think that's the positive there. Plus now he just may end up getting 5 more carries in a game. He may get 6 more touches overall at least per game moving on here. Yep. And he's got one of the best matchups for running back. So let's move on to another injury here. You have Christian Kirk, wide receiver. He's been out, but this was the first game where we were able to see Parker Washington go for the full game. And what did he do? Scores again. So we know this guy's going to have an impact, and the slot receivers from this Jacksonville offense are important.
And the other guy that we thought was going to pick up the load is Evan Ingram. And what did he do? He scored 2 touchdowns.
And Zay Jones got targeted a lot. I think Calvin Ridley was the odd man out in this game, and he looked like it too. So Christian Kirk, if you have him on your squad, you can drop him. I don't think he's coming back anytime soon, it sounds like.
He had on IR.
Yeah, he had surgery, so he's out for the remainder of your playoffs. Let's talk about Justin Jefferson. Yeah, I was going to say Jonathan Taylor because I wanted to say they're optimistic that he's going to actually return sooner than later. And Zach Moss did not have a good game. So
no, two bad games in a row with opportunity.
Yeah, so I think if you're a Taylor owner, you should be licking your chops a little bit and keep an eye on that up to game time because there's a chance there. But let's talk about Justin Jefferson. He took a pretty hard shot to the back, went to the hospital. They checked him out. X-rays were negative. All scans were negative, so he ended up flying back with the team. It's something you got to worry about, but I'm less worried about the injury, and I'm more worried about who's going to be throwing him the ball at this point and this offense.
Yeah, I think that this is a situation. Well, first of all, with Justin Jefferson, his injury, he's being listed as day-to-day. It's a short week. They're playing on Saturday. He will have to keep an eye on the injury report as it comes out this week and see what his limitations are in practice. I think if he logs one practice, they're going to play him, and he's going to want to play. He just spent 8 weeks on the bench. This team won again, even though it was ugly. They won, and he's going to be a big reason why they need to continue to win. I actually like him with Mullins. I think Mullins goes out there and actually throws the ball a little bit more than Dobbs. It takes a run. Like, this offense is not going to look very good. But in terms of volume and in terms of the passing, that could be a good thing. If they're behind in games and they're going to have to get the ball down the field, that's good for Justin Jefferson. I think as long as Justin Jefferson suits up and plays, he's a guy you have to start.
And to me, it's similar to the Keenan Allen play here. Is like the guy, he's going to get peppered. He is the best, if not one of the best wide receivers in the league, obviously. And this team needs to be able to move the ball downfield. It's been rough with Dobbs, but that's because Dobbs is not, he hasn't actually followed the playbook that this team has been. The identity of this team was thrown out the window when they put him at the starting quarterback position. And if Mullins comes in and he acts a little bit more like Christian Kirk, I think we have an opportunity for it to move a little bit better. But it doesn't help that his teammate also got hurt. Alexander Mattison left with an ankle injury. There's not sure. We have to keep an eye. They're probably doing all their scans today. You should find out on Wednesday what it looks like. But ankle injuries, even if it's a low ankle sprain, it's tough as a running back to come back and do that. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is an Iron Man. He was able to do that this past game. But if it's a high ankle sprain, he's definitely going to be out. And Ty Chandler's the guy that's going to be there. And I don't love Ty Chandler more than Madison. Madison finally started actually playing good football at the running back position. He looked really good, and it's unfortunate. So those two pieces together don't make me love this offense, but the one thing that I still love about the Vikings is this defense is so good. They keep their team in the games where I don't think it's going to be panic time and trying to sling the ball around. They're still going to try and move the ball and create them an identity with themselves. So I'm still high on Justin Jefferson. I'm still starting him if I have him. And if you got Ty Chandler, based on the matchups, I would start him as a flex play if the matchups there, or RB2 play if the matchup is good.
Yeah, I mean, just based on volume, I think if you are in a desperate situation, like there's other guys obviously I like better than him, and especially with the matchups that he has coming up, like yeah, there are other guys I like, but it doesn't mean I have those availability for those other guys. This isn't
Correct.
This isn't DFS. You don't always have the top 15 guys that you're working with. You might have been a Madison owner, and you have Ty Chandler as your backup. That's a significant downgrade to your team. But listen, Ty Chandler has been good when he's had opportunity. He's looked good when he's had opportunity, especially down by the goal line. So if they can get down there, if Justin Jefferson comes back and it opens this offense up a little bit more, then who knows? What this offense could be when you start being able to push the ball downfield a little bit more and keep defenses on their heels. Like if Jefferson's on the outside, you got to respect him. You're not going to stack 8 in the box and let them run on you.
Well, if you're the Dobbs owner too, it's not an injury, but he got benched, and it's most likely to be benched this upcoming week. So when you think about it that way too, in terms of the offense, the other players here, Addison to me is a sit and wait and see. I don't feel like I don't know if Mullins can handle 2 receivers in this offense, but I definitely still like Hawkinson in that position. Again, I talk about tight ends and these young quarterbacks and using them as their sort of safety blanket, and he's a perfect one. He's one of the best out there. And then, like Chris was talking about, was Ty Chandler, and we'll talk about him in a minute on another episode that's coming up here. It's going to drop here in a couple hours, so be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you get alerted when that comes out, and that's going to be our Week 15 playoff prep episode. It's going to give you all the info you need before the waiver time to grab these players and prepare not just for Week 15, but you should also be preparing for 16 and 17 because if you win, you don't have the opportunity sometimes to sit there and try and scrap together these teams that you need against good matchups. So be sure to hit that notification button so you get that drop. Let's talk about a couple more here real quick. Another big one, CJ Stroud. This one's going to impact many people's Week 15 playoff matchup because he's been fantastic. So if you don't have a backup here, that's tough. But this really hurts the whole offense. Davis Mills last year, they were one of the worst teams passing-wise, better on the ground running-wise last year. And that kind of flip-flopped this year. As of late, Singletary has actually been the better running back than Pierce. I don't like either running backs here. Tank Dell is hurt. Nico Collins, I'm lumping into that injury report right now because he left early with a calf injury. We may be seeing Noah Brown, Brevin Jordan, John Mechie, Robert Woods as the guys as pass catching with Davis Mills.
I mean, Dalton Schultz should be back. Looking at this and watching all this happen, like I love it. I'm a Derrick Henry owner. I'm like, this is the same team from last year, and their defense got beat up in this game too. Will Anderson left this game too.
Yep.
So, You think back the last couple of years and what Derrick Henry was able to do against that offense or that defense, and without an offense that's high flying and scoring a bunch of points at will, this can be a ground and pound game, which which I love. But yeah, I mean, you have to downgrade all these guys. I mean, again, Nico Collins left the game, so. At the same time, it's like, yeah, Noah Brown's opportunity is going to go up, right? Robert Woods' opportunity is going to go up, but they don't have C.J. Stroud throwing the football. They have
Correct.
Davis Mills. On the flip side, Davis Mills looked good at times last year. I mean, he made Nico Collins relevant last year in matchups down the stretch. So is it something I really hate? Is it something I don't like? I don't know. I'll have to see kind of how the week it goes with C.J. Stroud. This is all speculation right now. He's in protocol, but we've seen players leave protocol within a week to play. Their game is on Sunday.
Chris is right. Again, last year, week 18, he was QB1. He was 22 for 298 and 3 touchdowns against Indianapolis. He also had a QB6 finish against Vegas last year, week 7, where he threw for 302 touchdowns. He had 6 multi-game touchdowns last year. So
remember, this was
1 week though. It's 1 week though.
Yeah, but this is something we talked about in the preseason, that this team threw more than any other team last year.
Yeah.
Because they had to, because they were behind in every single game. And it was one of the reasons we liked this offense coming into this season is like, look what they did with Davis Mills. Look what they did with little to no weapons on the outside and add a couple pieces, and look at what this offense did.
Yeah.
Now, again, this is going to be a 1 week replacement, if anything. He might not even miss this week. If C.J. Stroud plays, then Noah Brown is clearly going to be a guy that you have to own.
If he's not already owned, because we've had him on our episodes already, you have to own him. You know, if you're listening to us, you've already got him on your squad.
Right. The other big one is Josh Jacobs.
Yep.
And so Josh Jacobs, injured his knee. They're
calling it quad for some reason in some of the reports too, so it's a little interesting to see. Obviously he didn't have a practice today, but I'd like to see what the actual injury report says and what the timetable to look for is. And again, we're going to talk about who we like in this offense without him on our Week 15 playoff prep episode. Again, keep an eye out for that dropping soon. But Josh Jacobs has been a top running back at times in this league, and a team that needs to establish this run for them to be successful. And the games where they can't establish the run, they struggle hard.
Well, that's my question is, how do you think that this offense, like, let's say Jacobs misses extended time, and I know we're going to talk about these guys in the next episode, but do you like one of those guys, either Zamir White or Amir Abdullah, or do you like the increased production coming from Michael Mayer, Devontae Adams?
No, I mean, here's the thing is,
or do you think that they're going to try to replace Josh Jacobs' production?
Well, here's the thing. They've had to pass a lot because they have struggled on the ground at times, and it hasn't equated to good output. I mean, Jacobs still ran the ball 13 times for 34 yards, and they couldn't even pass against the Vikings defense either. And the week before that against Kansas City, he was running back 8 on the week with 110 and a touchdown, and they struggled to pass the ball besides that one big catch and run by Devontae Adams in the first quarter. So I think like that's not going to be the factor. I think they're going to have to establish the run, get the play action going, which is going to help out these guys. They may pass more, yeah, but I still think Zamir White is the guy that I like there because he's the guy that's closest to a Josh Jacobs that can run this offense. And he's shown it in the preseason. He had some pretty good games in the preseason. And I think he's the one that if in there, he can run between the tackles better. He can still catch out the backfield. He proved it at Georgia, and he's proved it in the preseason. Amir Abdullah is going to have an impact here, though, because they're going to switch them up here and there, and he's very good out the backfield. He's, like, fantastic. So I do suspect them to split snaps. I wouldn't say carries. I'm going to say snaps in terms of game play moving forward depending upon this injury. So that's something to keep an eye on. We'll put a short on it if he's out for an extended period of time so that we can put our official analysis out there.
Sure.
Well, that's all for our injury report. Again, there's still 2 games tonight, so you never know what can happen here. Hopefully not anybody who's out there on your teams. No, it was jinxed already.
Jinxed it.
Nah,
You just
yeah.
jinxed it.
Well, I jinxed my guys. That's what I just did.
Yeah, Waddle's definitely getting hurt.
I'm not knocking. So keep an eye out for our Week 15 playoff prep, like we just said. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll be dropping here in a couple hours, so you can get all your prep done prior to the waiver wires hitting on Wednesday night. As always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.